we're going to go on the record, Mr. Moran, so if you want to talk to your witness, go outside. So, Mr. Redwine, do you remember, and I don't remember what it was, but we talked to you about your right to testify and what all that meant. And can you get by the microphone just so, and I'll get by the microphone too so it gets picked up. Have you had a chance to talk to your attorneys about your right to testify and whether or not you want to do that?
I have in the past, yes.
And have you had enough time to make a decision?
Yes.
Do you have any questions of me as to what your rights are?
No, Your Honor.
Did you understand the rights when I explained them to you?
I did, Your Honor.
Are you under the influence of anything today?
No, I am not.
Would you let me know what you've decided, whether or not to testify?
I have 1 second with my client.
You can. If you want to talk, that's fine.
Thank you, Judge. We're ready to proceed.
Okay. So, Mr. Redwine, you have made that decision?
I have, Your Honor.
And what have you decided?
I have decided not to testify, Your Honor.
Okay, and is this your decision?
Yes, it is.
And I assume that you are not under the influence of alcohol or drugs?
I am not.
And nobody's pressured you into this decision?
No, they have not.
Okay. I'm going to find that this is a knowing, voluntary, and intentional decision not to testify. The jury will be instructed appropriately in terms of not to be able to use that, the fact you did not testify against you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, they're here. Okay, you're right to the jury. Okay, we can be seated. So, you ready, Mr. Moran? Defense will call Grady. Come on up, Mr. King. Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm, under penalty of perjury, the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you. Have a seat. Yeah, approach it. Sure. I want to just clear this. Yeah, that's fine.
Good morning, Mr. King.
Morning.
Would you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Grady King, K-I-N-G.
Mr. King, who do you work for?
I'm employed as a investigator with Defense Counsel, your office.
And where'd you grow up?
I was born here in Durango.
How long have you been an investigator with our office?
A little over 10 years.
And did you have occasion to do some work for Mr. Redwine on this case?
Yes, sir, I did.
You've been present through some portions of the trial as advisory counsel, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And we'll discuss this a little more in a moment, but you did create an exhibit that we have emailed to Mr. Doherty that demonstrates the location of things in a Google Earth map, I guess they call it.
That's correct, yes.
Is it better called a flyover?
Flyover GPS map, yes.
Before we get there, I just want to discuss some of the things that you've observed in your work on this case, starting with whether or not you've been up to Runlet Park. Have you?
I have, yes.
And when you were at Runlet Park, did you make your way to the GPS location disclosed to us as the locations where Dylan Redwine's skull was recovered?
I did, yes.
And while you were in that area, did you observe that there was any livestock?
I did not observe actual livestock when I was up there.
Anything to suggest that that was a grazing area as was described by Mr. Simino this morning?
Yes. There were cow patties throughout the region. There were some bones that appeared to be from cattle in the Runlet Park area.
That's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. Will you describe for the jury where you were observing cow bones?
The main area that I observed the bones would be in the area coming down from the road through Runlet Park before you reach the tree line where the cranium was recovered.
And was it your observation that...
Mr. Doherty?
Your Honor, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. If we could just get a date or dates that we're referring to here, please.
Please.
Thank you for the reminder. What were approximately the dates?
I don't recall off the top of my head the exact date I did that.
Would it refresh your recollection to look at a report?
Yes.
Is it the July 14th report that would help? I think it is. Commissioner report.
Yes. Do you have a copy of this? Do you need to see it?
I do not have a copy, and I would like to see it, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right.
Let me know if, after reviewing this, it refreshes your recollection when you went up there.
Yes, it does.
What's that?
It was on October 23rd, 2020.
And how come you didn't go up there in November 2012? Had you been appointed to this case yet?
No, I was not working on this case at that time.
Was it your impression, based on the bones that you were seeing, that there were more than one cow that died up there, or that the bones were up there?
Yes, there were, based on the amount of bones that I observed, I would say that there were multiple cattle that had died in that region.
And switching gears here, just to make sure the jury's got ideas as to drive times, did you drive from Mr. Redwine's house to remain recovery site number 1?
I did, yes.
And did you time that?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury approximately how long it would take to get from his house up to remain site 1?
May I reference my report?
You may.
So the drive time from Mr. Mark Redwine's house to the first recovery site was 43 minutes and 24 seconds.
Did you have further occasion to figure out how long it takes to get from remain site 1 to the second remain site up at Runlet Park?
And I apologize. I just realized that was the wrong time frame. It was 28 minutes and 26 seconds to the first remain site.
I see. What was the time from that location up to Runlet Park?
After reaching the first site, going up to Runlet Park, that was the 43 minutes.
43 minutes from Mark's house.
Correct.
Were you present in the courtroom when there was some drone footage played by the prosecution?
Yes.
Did it depict an area that you're familiar with?
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity to recreate in that area?
Recreate in conduct work in that area, yes.
Would you say that you're familiar with the area?
Yes.
As the drone flew, were you able to observe it, take into view with its video recording equipment, some clips?
Yes.
Had that drone flown from Mr. Redwine's house and not made any turns to the left, would the terrain have not had as many cliffs?
Yes, that's correct.
With respect to those cliffs that are to the north of the remain site?
I would say the cliffs I'm referring to are directly downhill into the west of the recovery site.
Okay. So then to the east would be where the climber trail is that right? Let me ask it this way. Is there terrain that was not captured in the drone footage that is not as cliffed out?
Yes.
And that terrain would be from Mark's house to the east.
That's correct, yes.
And from the remain site to the south.
Correct.
And is that area flatter and more of a plateau than the area where there are cliffs?
Yes.
Did you make a map of the area using information that was provided to us by the prosecution?
I did, yes.
Will you describe for the jury how you made that map?
Basically, I received a report from Investigator Ezzell. They contain GPS coordinates for certain items. You can basically just input those GPS coordinates into Google Earth and create a pin at that location, mark the pin. That's basically what I did.
Did you include any other coordinates in that map?
I did. I also included coordinates for the canine Molly search that was conducted in that area.
So were you present when Karen Corcoran Gumming, the handler of that dog, testified and gave a list that was introduced into evidence of GPS coordinates?
Yes.
And did you use those GPS coordinates to input into that Google Earth?
I did, yes.
And is what Mr. Bogan got on the computer here something you looked at and you know that this is the map that's created?
Yes, I provided that to him.
We provided a copy to Mr. Doherty. He's not had a lot of time with it, but at this point I'd ask to admit it and
Is there a number on it?
I don't have a number on it.
And do we have a hard copy?
I do not have a hard copy.
Well, those are two things that we need. Why don't you pick a number, and you're going to have to get us a hard copy for the record and for the jury.
Understood.
And when can we have that hard copy in color? Tonight? Tomorrow?
12:15.
All right, thank you. So what's the number?
12:59, please.
Counsel.
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought somebody's talking. Mr. Doherty?
Thank you, and I didn't want to.
No, I appreciate that.
Yes. The people request more information be elicited from the witness about the foundation for the exhibit, how the witness put the exhibit together before I can make a decision on whether to object or not to its submission.
Okay.
Mr. King, there are some red pins in this Google Earth document, this map. What are the red pins?
I believe the red pins are the indications from canine Molly that were provided.
And those GPS coordinates that you used to create the red pins came from a document that has been admitted into evidence?
Yes.
What are the blue pins?
The blue pins are GPS coordinates I obtained from the report I was provided, authored by Investigator Ezzell.
Was that report in a chart?
Yes.
And was that provided here in the courthouse by Mr. Ezzell, who is not sitting here for a change?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so it came from the prosecution team?
Yes.
And was that in response to our request to understand how he created his map?
Yes, that's correct.
Have you added any additional pins aside from the ones that Mr. Ezzell created on that map?
No, sir.
So maps that we're asking the court to allow us to show has pins that were in a map that was used by the prosecution and Investigator Ezzell, is that right?
Yes.
And then the only addition to that map is that we added red pins to indicate locations where canine dog handler Karen Corcoran-Gumming said her dog did spinal transit.
Yeah, basically I created the GPS coordinates that I obtained from Investigator Ezzell's report. I input into Google Earth, and it's basically a single layer. I created a separate layer for the canine indications, and the way that is displayed is they're displayed together with different color-coded pins.
Move to admit 1259.
Mr. Doherty?
May I ask a question to you, Your Honor?
You may.
So just to be clear, Mr. King, it sounds as though the blue pin coordinates you obtained from Investigator Ezzell's report, is that right?
Correct, yes.
And for the red pin coordinates, I just want to make sure I'm clear. Did you take those coordinates from the document that the prosecution had previously submitted into evidence with the court's approval?
I believe, sir. I'm honestly not sure if it has been admitted as evidence. I know that my office received that information through discovery.
I understand. I'm just trying to figure out where the red pin coordinates came from. Do you recall what document you looked at for that?
It was one of the reports, I believe, authored by Karen Corcoran.
And I know you've been in and out of the courtroom through the trial, so if you missed this, just let me know. But earlier in the trial, there was a prosecution exhibit introduced and provided to the jury with pins showing the canine responses on the location, as well as the recovery of evidence from the location. Do you recall that?
I honestly don't recall that.
Do you know if it's the same GPS coordinates that were used to put together that same exhibit? Because if so, then...
I believe so, yes.
May I approach her?
Yes. And I believe the number is 518, 519, 520 in that range, according to my notes.
Thank you. Well, as that demonstrated, we've had a lot of exhibits introduced in this long trial, and our court reporter is indispensable. But what I wanted to show you was exhibit...
Chief Judge, would you please?
What's that, Your Honor? Oh, and the Chief Judge, yes.
No. Tell your Chief Judge.
Oh,
about
tell
the
our
reporter.
Chief Judge. Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. 520 in evidence, the people introduced it, and whether or not you were in the courtroom when it was introduced, I want to show it to you, because if we're talking about the same coordinates, then I'm not going to, of course, object to the admission. I just want to make sure that coordinates you used in putting together the exhibit that the defense is asking the court to admit are the same coordinates that we've been using with previously admitted exhibits. If not, then I would have additional inquiry.
Yes, sir. This appears to be the same.
Oh, great. Your Honor, no objection from the people. Thank you, Mr. King.
1259 is admitted. Yes.
The other part is to seal this up so that nobody wonders why this weird exhibit is in here, but those are the other coordinates, right?
Yes.
So,
put on the number.
1160, Defense Exhibit 1160, Karen Corcoran acknowledged that these were the GPS locations that her dog alerted at. You input those, making the red pins.
Yes.
And the blue pins are Chuck Heidel. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Yes.
So, based on your familiarity with the area and the creation, were you able to tell how far the closest that dog got to any place where something was recovered?
There's a couple pins, a red and a blue pin that appear relatively close.
So let's talk about the ones that are the closest. They're approximately in the center of the image here.
Yeah.
What's your best guess, having been up there, as how far apart they are?
So I measured that distance in Google Earth and Google Maps, and it was about 20 feet. That's about what I would estimate just being up there as well.
And could I have you zoom out a little bit? You're under permission to approach.
Yes.
So the area I was directionally challenged in describing would be this direction, right? So this area is flattened out as you move south.
Correct. It does appear to flatten out to the south there.
And so then Mr. Redwine's house would also be to the south. Is that right?
A little to the south, yes.
And then
Yes.
so this area is not as clipped out as the drone footage we saw where the drone flies that deep cliff.
Yes, the cliffs directly to the west are pretty large cliffs. There are cliff bands to the south, but not nearly as big as the ones directly to the west.
And does your familiarity with the area come from rock climbing and spending time in this area, especially with the case otherwise?
Yes.
Mr. King, that's it. Thank you. That's all I have for direct, and still have some questions.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Doherty, when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Morning, sir.
Morning.
You're an investigator working on behalf of the defense, am I right?
That's correct, yes.
And I believe you shared with us that you've been doing this kind of work for over 10 years, is that right?
That's right.
And you've had access to the discovery in this case,
Yes.
and that's well over 30,000 pages, 500 disks, hundreds and hundreds of photos and video clips as well, right?
That's correct.
And you've been in court throughout the trial, am I right?
In and out of court, yes.
And you've heard testimony from various witnesses here and there, in whole or in part, depending on your other duties.
Yes.
With regard to the report, it indicates you and Mr. Lister went up there on October 23rd of 2020, am I right?
That's right, yes.
So not back in 2012.
No.
And fair to say your office was assigned to the case in 2017, is that right?
I believe that's correct, yes.
So after taking the case in 2017, you didn't go up in 17, 18, 19?
I did go up into that region, or Middle Mountain Road, not for the purposes described in this report.
This report was completed October 23rd of 2020.
Correct.
And you talked about a drive time experiment of sorts that you did as part of putting together this map and this report, am I right?
Yes.
So I'd like to just ask you a few questions about that, okay?
Sure.
You and Mr. Lister left the defendant's home and drove 25 miles per hour up Middle Mountain Road.
That's correct. We tried to follow the speed limit being the entire way.
So you stay at 25 for the entire time. You're documenting these different times of arrival and departure that we have here.
Yeah, that's correct.
So you're able to drive from the defendant's home to the first remain site in approximately 28 minutes. Is that right?
Correct.
While going 25 miles per hour.
That's correct.
Then you get to the cattle guard at Runlet Park at approximately 43 minutes later, or excuse me, 43 minutes after the departure from the defendant's home.
Correct.
And then you arrive at the OHV route 44 minutes after the departure from the defendant's house.
That's correct, yes.
Where'd you, and I see in your report that you proceeded to park your vehicle, where'd you park your vehicle?
We parked our vehicle just off to the side of the OHV route that cuts off Middle Mountain Road at that point.
And fair to say you could take the OHV route down to the cranium site, am I right?
I believe so, yes.
Did you do that?
No.
And you could also walk across the field through the grass to get to the cranium site, am I right?
That's correct, yes.
And is that the route you took?
Yes.
And at this point, it's been 44 minutes from the time you left the defendant's house to where you parked your car.
That's correct, yes.
And then you look at your handheld GPS device before you get out of the car, and you see the cranium is 0.06 miles away from the car.
That's correct.
Is your testimony that it took you 31 minutes to walk that just over a half mile?
Yes, sir.
As you testified on direct, you spent a lot of time outdoors, right?
Yes.
Climbing, rappelling, hiking, fair to say?
Yes.
And it took you 31 minutes just to walk across the grass on the park to get to the cranium site?
Good answer.
It has been.
Just the GPS device you used showed a distance of 0.061 miles from car to cranium site?
Good answer.
Go ahead and answer that.
0.061 miles from where we parked our vehicle to the cranium recovery site.
And then you, after you look at the cranium site, you go back to your car across the field.
That's correct, yes.
You don't use the OHV trail.
No, sir.
And then you drive back down the road, right?
That's correct.
And again, you maintain the speed limit of 25 miles per hour.
Yes.
But your trip down takes only 33 minutes, am I right?
Yes.
So 43 minutes, according to your report, or 44 minutes, excuse me, from defendant's house to the top where you parked, and then 33 minutes from the top back down to the defendant's home.
Yes.
Your Honor, if we may, I'm going to ask that Exhibit 223 be put back on the screen.
Please do that.
And have you seen Exhibit 223 before, Mr. King?
I have, yes.
And does it appear to you that those measurements are fair and accurate with your own experience up on Middle Mountain and Middle Mountain Road?
That does appear accurate.
Okay. Take down 223. When you went to the first remain site,
Yes.
did you actually get out of the car and walk down the trail to where the remains were left?
I believe we did stop briefly at that location.
Did you get out of your car and walk down the trail to where the remains were left?
Just down the initial trail to kind of the main point in that location right there.
By main point, you mean where the ATV trail and the footpath diverge?
That's correct, yes.
Did you then take the footpath to where the remains were left?
I do not believe we did at that time.
But you've done that before, walked to that location?
Yes.
I don't have nothing further, Mr. King. Thank you.
Okay. Any reader? Yes, please, briefly. What, I take it you guys weren't running down the hill, but why did it take a little while to get down the hill? You weren't crab walking or slow walking, were you?
That was our first time going to the cranium recovery site. We were both somewhat unfamiliar with that area, and I think just planning how we were going to reach that location, and we may not have done it in the best possible way at that time.
It's fair to say you've been up there half a dozen times, several times, both not just recreating but also working on this case.
That's correct, yes.
And tried to replicate, based on the GPS coordinates provided to us by the government, where things were located.
Yes, that's correct.
At both the Runlet Park area and the Bear Eye Park area.
Yes.
And so we were having to rely on what was provided to us.
Are you testifying now?
What did we have to rely on to get to those places?
We relied on material provided to us by the district attorney in this case.
And do you remember what year was the first time you went to the area? I'm sorry, and I don't mean about recreating, I mean for work.
I believe that would have been in 2018.
And then several times thereafter.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you.
Any questions from the jury? All right, you can step down. Thank you. Defense?
None of the defense rests. Thank you.
All right. I know there are a couple rebuttal witnesses. Do we have enough time to do Mr. Ezzell before lunch, or would it be better to take a break now?
We can get that done.
Okay. Mr. Ezzell, come on back up. You're still in row. No, I just have blue. Maybe I do. That's in the chambers. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Lieutenant Ezzell, you've testified a few times now, so I'm only going to focus on two specific topics very briefly, okay?
Okay.
It had been mentioned in your testimony at one point that there was a GPS on defendant's truck. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. Was there, in fact, a court-ordered GPS at some point regarding the defendant's trucks?
Yes, there was.
Did his work truck have a GPS?
Yes.
Did he ever use that truck in the context of the case that was relevant?
No.
Did he also have a Chevy truck and a Dodge truck that had a GPS unit on them at some point in time?
Yes.
What were the date ranges of the GPS units on those trucks?
One device was November 29th of 2012 through December 21st of 2012. The second device was on the vehicle from November 29th of 2012 through January 25th of 2013.
So about 2 months?
Yes.
And you said the start date on both of those was November 29th of 2012?
Yes.
So for the first 10 days that Dylan was a missing child, was there any GPS unit on the defendant's vehicles?
No.
And after November 25th, after January 25th of 2013, was there any GPS unit on either of his vehicles?
No.
And that would have included the time frame that Jed Botsford testified when the gate opened for sledders?
Yes.
And that would have included the time that Mike Hall saw him up on Middle Mountain Road on April 23rd of 2013?
Yes.
Those times he did not have a GPS on either vehicle?
Correct.
And I believe from November 19th to November 29th, that 10 days, that's the entire time prior to the search warrant executed in the case. He did not have a GPS on either vehicle either.
Correct.
And then I just wanted to clarify some questions about the searches by Remain Site 1. You remember you testified about a big map that had all the areas that had been searched in the case?
Yes.
And you remember testifying that many of those areas were searched by boots on the ground and line searches, and some of them were also searched by helicopter. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Judge, may I publish 506, Peoples?
Yes.
So, Lieutenant Ezzell, you remember testifying about People's Exhibit 506 and the searches done there?
Yes.
Is this pink shaded area in 506, how was that area searched?
That area was searched entirely on foot.
Was that by line searches and grid searches like the jury saw in the photographs?
Yes.
And were other areas on this map also searched?
Yes.
Why aren't those highlighted?
It's basically a different style of search. We're not able to conduct a standard line search or grid search.
That's just based on the terrain?
Yes.
So then all the other areas were things with ropes and things where you searched those areas, just not with the line search like you did in the pink area?
Correct.
Between this Remain site up here all the way down to the defendant's home, was that whole area searched?
May I step up to the mat?
Yes, you may. Judge, is that
It's okay. But thank you.
This area through here, all the way down towards Mark Redwine's house was searched. Several locations up into this area here were searched, all by search and rescue personnel. This down in here was searched by law enforcement and wildland firefighters.
Let me show one more map. People's 23. Do you know where the Remain site is on this map?
Yes.
Can you show the jury where it is? Okay. And then you see the area down by the defendant's home, and we heard some of that area flattens out, et cetera.
Yes.
Was all that area searched with boots on the ground as well?
Yes.
I have no more questions. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Rand. Yes.
So you're basing your assessment of what was searched there on what other people told you, right?
Not entirely.
You did some of that searching, but you were also having to rely on your personnel, correct?
It was both.
Yep. And it was your personnel who put this GPS mark on the bag with the beer can in it that you sent off to CBI, right?
That's correct.
Those folks told you where they searched, and those folks told you the GPS coordinates of that item, right?
I observed from a distance where they were
But
at.
that wasn't the question.
The question's been asked and answered, Your Honor.
I want to, hold on. Are you going to switch questions?
I'll withdraw that. Okay. There was some mention about the GPS units placed on Mr. Redwine's car.
Yes.
Whose responsibility was it to seek further judicial approval for that GPS unit?
It was my investigators that were involved in that portion of the investigation.
And neglecting to do that or deciding not to do that, that was based on not having the evidence to back it up, right?
I'm not sure I follow the question.
Law enforcement did not seek any further GPS units being placed on Mr. Redwine's Chevy or Dodge after January 25th, 2013, right?
To my knowledge, we were not able to get any further installation of the GPS device.
That's it. Thank you, sir.
Any reader?
No, thank you, Judge.
Any questions from the jury? Okay, you can step down. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will take our lunch break. We're in the home stretch. You're going to get to go home early, or go back to work if you want. You can do that too. In any event, please don't discuss this case either amongst yourselves or with anyone else during this trial. Don't look at social media. Don't keep an open mind. Do keep an open mind. Don't permit any third person to discuss this. Don't talk with anybody, witness, defendant, or lawyer that's involved in the case. Don't gather any information on your own. And we'll start up again at 1 o'clock. I imagine it won't be real long. We will then have to work on instructions, which is outside your presence. And I'll explain what we're going to do then tomorrow. Okay? So with that, everybody rise for the jury.